Who doesn't like a little bit of self-pity? Well, there's nothing that says self-pity as much as minor chords and minor harmony more generally, which is the topic of today's lesson. So if you have the blues, let me today give you the language with which to express it. We're basically going to translate all of the ideas about functional harmony from the previous lesson to minor scales. In other words, we will build chords on a couple of different minor scales, and we will explore how the subdominant leads to the dominant, which leads to the tonic sounds in each. So for each scale, we'll try to figure out which scale degrees play a subdominant role, which play a dominant role, and which play the role of the tonic. So without further ado, let's start with the melodic minor. And to be concrete, we will work with the C melodic minor, but the ideas we lay down will of course be independent of key. So here is the C melodic minor scale and its associated degrees. Just as with the major scale, we will start by building a chord on the first, third, fifth, and seventh degrees of this scale. And you should notice that this is a C minor major 7. Now what we're going to do is we're going to plane this chord, meaning we're going to move each note one step up along the notes of the scale. So in this case, the C becomes a D, the E flat becomes an F, G an A, and this B becomes a C. So the next chord is a D minor 7. We can keep doing this and obtain the following chords, starting with C minor major 7, D minor 7, E flat augmented 7, F dominant 7, G dominant 7, A half diminished, and B minor, B half diminished. Now we can try to assign the same functional roles as we did for the major scales, and there will be some small alterations. The first degree is actually a tonic, as is the third and the sixth. So all of these play the role of a tonic. Similarly, both the second degree, which is a D minor 7, and the fourth degree, which is an F dominant 7, play the roles of subdominants. The fifth degree, the G dominant 7, plays the role of the dominant function, or plays the dominant function. However, the chord built on the leading note, the B half diminished, doesn't really sound very dominant. So we're going to leave it out. It doesn't really play any clear functional role in this discussion. Now, to make it easier for you to see all of these denominations, I've colored tonics in black, subdominants in blue, and dominants in red. And scale degrees that have no clear role are just going to be a light shade of gray. Now, let's ask ourselves, how does a subdominant to dominant to tonic progression sound like? And we can try a few options. Well, let's try with a 4-5-1. So this is an F dominant 7, G dominant 7, C minor major 7. Alright, sounds kind of minor. And quite different from the major version. How about a 2-5-1, which is legitimate? The 2 plays a subdominant role here. So that would be a D minor 7 to a G dominant 7 to a C minor major 7. Well, that's another option, and that's the melodic minor scale for you. Let's try another minor scale, this time the harmonic minor. Again, we'll confine ourselves to C harmonic minor just to be concrete, and this scale is Now, as before, we start with a seventh chord built on the first, third, fifth, and seventh degrees of this scale. And again, this is a minor major seventh chord. And now we can start playing it. So basically, we're going to move up the scale, obtaining the following sequence of chords: C minor major 7, D minor half or D half diminished, E flat augmented 7, F minor 7, G dominant 7, A flat major 7, and B diminished 7. Back to the minor major 7th built on the first degree. Now, as before, we need to ask ourselves what role plays or each degree plays. Well, the first degree and the third play the role of a tonic. The second degree, the D half diminished, the F minor 7, and in this case, the sixth degree as well, all play a subdominant role in this scale. And finally, both the fifth degree and the seventh degree play a dominant role. And you can hear this. For example, we can play a 6 to 5 to 1. That would be a subdominant to dominant to tonic. We can have another example. Let's do a 4-5-1, which would be F minor 7, G dominant 7, C minor major 7. What about a 2-5-1? Well, this would be a D half diminished to G dominant 7 to a C minor major 7. So that's the harmonic minor for you. Let's next try the natural minor, also known as the Aeolian. So the C natural minor scale is this. And we're going to do the exact same thing. Start with the seventh chord built on its root by playing the first, third, fifth, and seventh degrees, and moving it up. So what do we get? We get the following succession of chords: C minor 7, D half diminished, E flat major 7, F minor 7, G minor 7, A flat major 7, B flat dominant 7, and back to a C minor 7. Now here again, the roles of the degrees are a little bit different than in the major scale. The first and third degrees, the C minor 7 and E flat major 7, play the role of a tonic. The second, fourth, and sixth degrees all play the role of a subdominant. So the D half diminished, F minor 7, and A flat major 7. The problem with the Aeolian is that both the fifth and the seventh degrees, which are G minor 7 and B flat dominant 7, are actually pretty weak dominant chords in the sense that they play a pretty weak dominant function. This is because they kind of sound like they resolve to the tonic, but they're not as strong as a more dominant type chord. So I've colored them in green just to set them apart, and you can treat them as weak dominants. So in this scale, a subdominant to dominant, or to weak dominant actually, to a tonic would sound like this. The 4-5-1 would be F minor 7, G minor 7, C minor 7. While a 2-5-1 would be D half diminished, G minor 7, C minor 7. This brings us to the last scale we'll consider today, which is the Dorian. And the C Dorian is the seventh chord built on its root is a C minor 7. And just quickly going over the chords built on the different degrees, we have a C minor 7, D minor 7, E flat major 7, F dominant 7, G minor 7, A half diminished, B flat major 7, and we're back at the C minor 7. As before, I'll point out that the first, third, and sixth degrees play the role of a tonic, the C minor 7, E flat major 7, and A half diminished. The second degree, the D minor 7, and the fourth play the role of a subdominant. And as with the previous scale we've considered, the fifth degree is kind of a weak dominant, or plays a weak dominant function. And the seventh degree, which is a B flat major 7, doesn't really fit into either a subdominant, tonic, or dominant function. So we're going to leave it out of this consideration and keep it a light gray. Now, here comes a bit of hand waving. Because minor scales are similar to each other, what people often do, and what actually turns out to work in practice, is pool together all of the tonics from all the scales, then all of the subdominants from all scales, and all of the dominants from all of the scales. And you can see these arranged on the screen for simplicity. And the rule is, if you could call it a rule really, is when constructing a minor progression from a subdominant to a dominant to a tonic, you can mix the different scales together. So this means you can basically choose any chord you want from each of the columns in the table in front of you. For example, if you're in the key of C, a minor subdominant to a dominant to a tonic might be D half diminished, G dominant 7, C minor major 7. Or we could do D half diminished, G dominant 7, C minor 7. And we could also, for example, do A flat major 7, B diminished 7, C minor major 7. And to actually create these progressions, we need to borrow chords and mix them up between the different scales. Now, let's see how this is translated into practice. We'll look at a minor jazz standard, which is Black Orpheus. And this is kind of a famous jazz standard. And I'll walk you through the chords of the standard, which you can now see on the screen. I'll just play it briefly so you can kind of have an idea of how it sounds, and then we'll analyze it together, and you'll see how the language of functional harmony really helps sort this progression out. Now, one simple way to understand this progression using functional harmony is to think of it as comprised of two keys. It starts out in A minor, and you can see I've highlighted on the screen the roles of the different chords in this A minor, which chord plays a subdominant role, which plays a dominant, and which plays the tonic. Then in the middle, it modulates to C major. Now, modulate is just a fancy word for changes key. So in the middle, it changes to C major, and in C major, the D minor 7 plays its subdominant role, the G dominant 7 plays a dominant, and the C major 7 plays the role of a tonic. And there's just this chord in the middle, the A dominant 7, which we can't still understand or assign a function to. That will come in subsequent lessons. Now, after it modulates to C major, it modulates back to A minor. And to help you see this, I've outlined the A minor parts in black and the C major parts in red. The F major 7 signals the return to the A minor scale, with both F major 7 and B half diminished playing the subdominant role. Now, how to practice these concepts? Well, the way to practice these concepts is to analyze minor jazz standards and minor songs in general, just as I recommend to do with functional harmony on major scales. Some famous minor jazz standards include Autumn Leaves, Blue Bossa, All the Things You Are, Stella by Starlight, and Beautiful Love, to just name a few. And you can easily Google their chords and then just sit down and analyze them using the concepts we've laid out in functional harmony. Ask yourself for each chord, can you assign a subdominant or a dominant or a tonic role for it based on everything we've discussed so far? This will also prepare you for our next lesson, where we will discuss tonicization, which will really open up some crazy possibilities for jazz harmony. That's it. I hope you've learned something interesting, and I will see you next time.